With Stranger Things' newest season on the horizon and the Welcome to the Hellfire Club starter set for Dungeons & Dragons out, I wanted to explore a rumor and a theory. GameMasters here, and we know that the Stranger Things group is going to have to destroy their version of Vecna in the newest season. In canon, in Dungeons & Dragons lore, there has only been one artifact that has even come close, the Sword of Kas. Today, we are going to dive deep into this relic and see if it will present itself in the show and if it really could be used to destroy Vecna. The Sword of Kas originally showed up in the original version of Dungeons & Dragons through a supplement called Eldritch Wizardry. While what we got there was very basic in description, and keep in mind that this supplement came out in 1976, it wouldn't be until the 1990 module Vecna Lives for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition that we would see a full-on description and history for this famed artifact. But don't worry, we're going to return to the Eldritch Wizardry version of the artifact of the Sword of Kas later in the video. Before we jump fully into this sword, I'm going to be upfront with you and not keep you all in suspense about my theory here. I want to put out there that Eddie, whom we all saw get defeated, will return as a Kas-like character to help defeat Vecna. Why do I think this? Well, how did Eddie perish? He was bitten by a lot of bat-like creatures. What ultimately happened to Kas? Well, he was turned into a vampire. You kind of see where I'm going with this, yeah? Okay, as for the Sword of Kas, I'm wondering if it'll end up being the Axe of Kas, the Axe of Eddie. Consider this. Eddie played a guitar, an electric guitar, and what's more, those have always been referred to as, an axe. We know that there are a lot of connections between D&D and Stranger Things, and while many of them are metaphorical, I'm almost convinced that this is ultimately what is going to happen. That all said, let's jump fully into the advanced D&D version and check out that Sword of Kas. The Sword of Kas is described as being a huge two-handed sword, 8 feet in total length with lots of magical properties. The text goes on to say that the edge of the blade ripples with iridescent undulations, that a vein of magically hardened gold runs the center spine. The guards themselves are fashioned from unicorn horns. The hilt is wrapped in red leather. The pommel is a leering, bearded face. The Sword of Kas radiates magic, but the type of magic that it puts out there changes each time someone tries to detect it. It's not going to radiate as being good or evil, but rest assured this sword is very much fully evil. It is an intelligent weapon and communicates with the wielder telepathically. Remember that, because we are going to return to that telepathic element in just a moment. Vecna forged this sword, filling it with all types of wondrous powers and abilities, and presented it to his lieutenant, Kas. For years, Kas would slay innocents and guilty alike with this sword, all in the name of Vecna. Kas would eventually begin to hear the sword talk to him. I told you we'd return to that. And it would convince him that he himself was more powerful than Vecna, that he could do a better job at ruling. Okay, over the years, Kas would eventually lead an assault on Vecna in his tower, only to discover that Vecna had built into the sword a failsafe. While it could still slice and dice as a sword, its magical properties and abilities were powerless against the one who forged it. Still, Kas attacked with everything that he had, and keep in mind, he was a extremely well-skilled warrior and swordsmith, and in the end, all that remained of Vecna was his hand, his eye. But before Vecna's body faded into the ethereal, he caused the tower to collapse, killing Kas. Before Kas's final breath, he would impart his rage and hatred of Vecna into the sword itself, which would forever alter and shape that sword's personality. Of course, Kas would eventually return as a vampire, but honestly, that's going to have to be a tale for another time, a video for another day. For now, I'm going to keep on with the Sword of Kas. Being found in the rubble, the Sword of Kas would pass from individual to individual, each one becoming a powerful warrior, but also manifesting an unsatiable desire to find the hand and eye of Vecna, as well as Vecna himself. This desire would take that warrior into the unknown reaches of wherever they felt compelled to go, but then would never be heard from again. Only the sword itself would be found, and the process would begin again. It would be picked up, and the desire to hunt down Vecna would flood that person's mind, and over the centuries this would happen, over and over and over. You get the picture there. Should you run across the Sword of Kas, beware, for it has some very powerful abilities. Keep in mind, what we're going over right now is all based on the 2nd edition version of the Sword of Kas. And while we'll check out the 5th edition counterpart a little later in the video, should you see anything here that you want to move to a modern game, like with all homebrew stuff, steal it and make it your own. Should you run across the Sword of Kas in the wild, perhaps in an underground cavern or in a forgotten corner of a lost dungeon, be prepared for a shock, because when you first touch it, it's going to cause 2d20 points of damage, but from that point forward, you can wield it unharmed. Well, sort of. Because the sword itself is of evil alignment, it's going to whisper to you things of betrayal and greed. It will make you possessive of it, and it won't want you to let it go. You won't want to give it to anyone else. The sword will be yours until you are slain, and all the while, it's going to feed into your mind ideas of hunting down and destroying Vecna. While we know, you and the viewer and myself, we know that the sword is powerless against Vecna, your character likely won't, but the power that it does hold in any other circumstances makes it a very tempting weapon. A very formidable weapon at that. Should you survive the initial 2d20 damage when you pick it up, you will immediately come to know that it can cast Shield 3 times per day, which Shield causes an invisible barrier to form in front of you, which negates magic missile attacks, gives you an armor class bonus against other hand-flung missile attacks and other basic attacks. The sword also gives you Fire Giant Strength, which provides a +10 bonus to damage as well as a -4 bonus to Thaco. This is an armor class bonus as well as something that simply makes you harder to hit. It also gives you Paralyzed by Touch, which you can use up to 3 times per day. The target has a -4 to their saving throw against that as well. And lastly, the Sword of Kas lets you cast Plane Shift once per day. This spell allows you to move either yourself and up to 7 others or another creature into a completely different plane of existence. It's pretty damn powerful. And as I said, this sword has some really cool stuff, and it makes it very tempting to want to have. And it doesn't stop there. While those are all powers that will become immediately known to you, it also has some that will either have to be discovered through trial and error or by the whim of the sword itself. In other words, it's the sword. It will manifest the following abilities when it is ready for you to have them. The upside, once it reveals what we're about to look at, it's there constantly. You won't have to coax the ability to happen. It's just there coursing through the sword and you. You'll eventually see the sword act as a +6 defender, in which you can use any of the +6 bonuses to either improve your armor class or stay on the weapon as an attack bonus. For example, if you wanted to keep 4 of the bonus of the +6 bonus on the sword as an attack bonus, you could then take the remaining 2 and add that as an armor class bump. As if that wasn't powerful enough, you can change this up each round of combat. The Sword of Kas can cause double damage to creatures that come from the outer plane while they're on the prime material plane. Additionally, it gives you immunity to fear spells, as well as to magic missile and charm and holding spells, so like hold person or hold person, those kind of spells. It's going to pollute holy water that you come within 30 feet of, and it can give you foresight. And this is more or less like a spidey sense. You'll get kind of a tingle. Yeah, I know, Peter hates that word. But it's going to warn you of impending danger. For example, a rogue is about to pick your pocket. You'll get a twinge that it's about to happen. Or an arrow has been loosed and it's flying towards you. There we go. There's where the lens is. Anyway, that arrow is flying towards you. You'll have this intuition to duck or to dodge left or right so that you can avoid being hit. Foresight is kind of an intuition against immediate danger. While all of that makes the Sword of Kas pretty high and tempting, it does have some drawbacks and some major downsides. In spite of all the fun abilities and properties that the Sword of Kas has and gives to your character, it will cease providing all of them if it gets within 60 feet of Vecna or one of Vecna's artifacts, either the hand or the eye. It also won't protect you against any of Vecna's spells, regardless of the range. Your immunity to fear, magic missile, charm, and hold spells, that all stops. Its +6 defender ability, it's not going to function. And your foresight's intuition, that ceases to give you any warning. The sword will fill you with an immediate sense of needing to destroy Vecna upon seeing him. It will almost certainly control your actions, forcing you into melee combat. Only a successful cast of the wish spell can break that force, but even then, one would have to openly recognize that it is the sword that is compelling you so that they could craft the wish spell accordingly. Another drawback, and this is even a part of Vecna being anywhere around, the Sword of Kas has an insatiable demand for blood. It craves violence and destruction, and if the sword is not sated with fresh blood on a daily basis, it's going to attempt to take control of your mind, in which it will force you to try to kill anything so that it can have that taste of blood. This could even be the nearest party member or even an innocent nearby NPC. Of course, if you can best against its 19 intelligence, you can stave off the sword's control of your mind for one day. Should anyone recognize that the Sword of Kas is influencing you and attempt to take it from you, that will always be viewed with hostile suspicion, possibly leading you down a path of thinking that everyone is out to steal your sword, which in turn can trigger your mind that it is impossible to cooperate with anybody. And you'll eventually be tempted to either destroy that individual, or if you have enough resolve to know better, you'll want to seek out a life of solitude so that the temptation is not there to attack your companions. Of course, there are legends and thoughts on how one could destroy the Sword of Kas. Many scholars have gathered over the years to discuss the history of the Sword of Kas and its possible destruction. Along with those discussions are the retellings of Kas's history, and it has been supposed by some that one way to destroy the sword is to wipe every memory of Kas out of the minds of everyone. Easily said, but not very practical. Another thought is that the sword must be cast over the waterfall of the moon and shattered upon the rocks below. The issue here is no one knows exactly where this waterfall of the moon is. Some even think that the waterfall was destroyed during the twin cataclysms, making it impossible to ever even find. Others theorize that the sword will simply cease to be once Vecna is slain, that because a part of his essence exists within the sword, that with him dead, that essence will simply just fade away. Yet another thought is to take the mace of Cuthbert and hammer the sword into a plowshare. In essence, you would be taking a powerful weapon and turning it into a piece of farming equipment. Of course, if you are looking to homebrew things up, you can always come up with really your own unique method of destruction, or even powers and abilities for the sword itself. In fact, let me know what additional powers you might give the Sword of Kas down in the comments. Let me know, too, what you may use as a means of destruction. Kind of curious about that. Now, earlier in the video, I teased that we would check out the 5th edition counterpart for the Sword of Kas. Let's go ahead and jump into that now. The newest iteration of the Sword of Kas gives it a vastly different visual, the 5th edition version here. While the red leather hilt is still there, gone are the unicorn horns and the bearded pommel. And, the absence of that bearded pommel, it kind of makes me a little sad. But the history of the sword stays largely intact. Some of its abilities and properties have been adjusted, and it still craves blood. This go-around, however, cites that if it doesn't taste fresh blood within 1 minute of being drawn from its scabbard, then the wielder is going to take 3d6 psychic damage, and that's if you pass a DC 15 charisma check. Should you fail that check, the sword will then charm you until its demand for blood has been met. You'll gain a +3 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with the sword, but what's more, where normally a critical hit would be made if you rolled a 20 on a d20, with this sword, it's considered a critical hit on a 19 or a 20, plus it dishes out an extra 2d10 damage against undead. The Dungeon Master can pick a major and minor beneficial property, as well as a major and minor detrimental property. Plus, while the sword is on you, you can cast Call Lightning, Divine Word, and Finger of Death directly from the sword. It also gives you 1d10 added to your initiative rolls, and in a similar way that it acted as a +6 defender from the AD&D version, you can transfer some or all of the sword's attack bonus to your armor class instead. It gives you resistance to necrotic damage, and while it doesn't grant to you dark vision, the sword itself has dark vision out to 120 feet, which, because it can communicate with you, telepathically, it's likely going to look out for your best interests until it no longer needs you, and will tell you what kind of lurks up ahead in that darkness. That's what I'm trying to say, in the darkness. Like in the previous version, the 5th edition Sword of Kas also wants to destroy Vecna and anything Vecna related. And the means of destruction, they've been added to as well. Scholars feel that if someone possessed both the hand and eye of Vecna, that if they have merged with those artifacts, like, replace their hand with hand of Vecna, replace their eye with the eye of Vecna, then they could possibly cast a wish spell and just wish for the Sword of Kas to be destroyed. The question that remains is, what version of the sword do you like best? The 2nd edition version or the 5th edition version? Or would you homebrew up your own version? I mean, the very nature of the Sword of Kas makes it necessary to homebrew. The best example I can give is jumping back to its very first incarnation from the Eldritch Wizardry supplement. In the intro to this video, we brought up the 1976 Dungeons & Dragons supplement Eldritch Wizardry. In this, we would get a very basic version of the Sword of Kas. And when I say basic, I mean basic. It is described as having a thin gray blade of some metallic substance, that it has a +3 bonus or +5 when fighting undead, demons, and godlings, that it has an intelligence of 18 and an ego of 19, I believe. I'll correct that with a pop-up. I think it's 19. It has one extraordinary power. It is evil and will attempt to control any fighter that picks it up and turn that fighter to evil. It has 1 power from table 1, 2 from table 2, 1 power from table 4, and 1 power from table 5. It also states that the sword will, of course, attempt to dominate its owner. Of course. The default listings for the sword's powers, as depicted, show that to be from Table 1, it grants water breathing. The 2 powers from Table 2 are that the user may become ethereal twice per day, and you can cause serious wound of double twice per day as well. From Table 4, as long as the sword is on your person, you act as a magic drainer, meaning that any magic cast upon you is going to have no effect. But the downside is that you cannot use magic either, and any magic item item that touches you is going to lose its ability permanently, although that doesn't apply to the Sword of Kas itself. The power from Table 5 tells us that you are able to restore 1 lost level per week, perhaps from a nearby friendly player. Of course, those are the suggested powers for the sword, but you as the Dungeon Master are encouraged to pick and choose your own powers from the provided tables. And this is what I meant by a few minutes ago by asking which version of the Sword of Kas do you like best, and that the very nature of it suggests adding your own powers. Granted, it wants you to pick from this table, but we always make up our own stuff anyway, right? The second edition's Book of Artifacts also encourages to mix and match powers and abilities, as does the 5th edition version. So again, I ask to you, what would you pick? What powers are there that you would choose from the tables within the official D&D books, or would you simply homebrew up some powers? Either way, let me know what you pick down in the comments. Oh, and I have one more question for you. But first, I gotta thank everyone for watching today's video. I especially want to thank my YouTube members and Patreon supporters, as their contributions to the channel have made it so that I didn't need to take on a sponsor for today's video. And I mean, come on, we all skip those forced ads anyways, right? If you'd like to see about becoming a supporter, I'm going to leave links down in the description. I'd also like to invite everybody watching to join my Discord. We get up to some fun chats over there, and a lot of other fun kind of behind the scenes things are discussed all the time. And I'll leave a link to that down in the description as well. Regarding the Sword of Kas, it has always been an artifact of wonder to me. To see it tied into the TV show Stranger Things would make sense, again, to me, especially with how they chose to have tied their own version of Vecna to the show. I also think that Eddie is going to become the Kas of the show. That all said, with that theory out there, for my final question, what other evidence have you seen that might make Eddie Kas? And have you seen anything pop up that could take the place of the Sword of Kas that would help defeat Vecna? Perhaps, as we mentioned earlier, the Axe of Eddie? Let me know what you've discovered down in the comments. And until next our paths cross, may your sword not start whispering to you.